Hey everyone, good morning. Good morning. It is spiritual healthcare for yet another beautiful Tuesday morning. Beautiful Tuesday morning. Welcome to all of you. It's a beautiful day out here in Edmonton. I don't know how you guys are doing, but it's a beautiful day here. Lots of sunshine again, finally, because we rained all weekend. This past weekend. So I'm glad that it is sunny this morning. So good morning to everybody. Hello, everyone. Good morning, Marge and Patricia and Dale and Kaz, and everybody's coming in. It's so good. It is so awesome to see everybody. So day 76, you guys, it's day 76, and this is awesome. And I've got some super cool topics to talk about today because I had some pretty cool things. Well, my best friend and I had some cool things happen last night, and it was pretty neat. So and it got me thinking on some questions that I did some research on. So I had to share it. So anyway, so good morning to everybody. It is nice to see all of you, and so this is great. We're going to be talking about a great question as well from Kaz this morning, who was asking about deathbed apparitions and people seeing the dead just before they pass away, and what the context was of all of that. So we're going to be chatting about that, as well as the effects on how we perceive, how we see certain things, how that works, and how it affects our perception of ourselves, as well as lightning, thunderstorms, and the paranormal. How does that work out as well? Does it have an influence? So as I say, lots of stuff today to cover, which is going to be really fun. I hope you guys had a great Monday evening. As I say, it's really nice here today. We actually have some really good weather. It's sunny, and which is always a change from a really rainy weekend. But it's a good thing too, because as I say, Alberta gets a ton of forest fires. So I'm glad that we've, changed that over. It was really neat. So there's been some pretty cool interactions going on over the last number of weeks and stuff like that, with a lot of non-physical energy that's been kicking up. I know a lot of people have been reporting it, that there's been a lot of things going on in and around their own homes, their own experiences. And I think it does have to do with the level of, how connected we are or not to stuff that's happening around us, and how connected we are or not to ourselves and our inner beings and our inner stillness and all of those things. But I wanted to grab this about lightning, because we had kind of an interesting encounter last night. My friend Patricia and I, we had some interesting series of events go on, which ended up culminating in her seeing this sort of what we think is an apparition that showed up and disappeared. And it was just really cool. It was really cool. Shouldn't have happened. We troubleshot the whole thing, couldn't figure it out. And it got me thinking, what if you've got a thunderstorm, a lightning storm, or anything like this, what influence or role does it have to play on paranormal phenomena, specifically apparitions and hauntings and stuff like that. So, when I got breaking it down, and when I got thinking about it, first of all, the problem with any sort of assumption with the paranormal or apparitions and things like that is people think that we have tools to measure apparitions, and we don't. We just don't. There's no such thing as a ghost meter or anything like that. Electromagnetic meters, I know you see them on the TVs and stuff like that all the time. EMF meters and or K2 meters and stuff like that. And the reality is, sorry to pop the bubble of everybody that's been chasing paranormal things with EMF meters, especially the K2 meters. So they are not designed to register paranormal phenomena. They're just not. What they're designed for is to register electromagnetics, specifically of things like wiring, your refrigerators, your things that are electrical. That's what they're calibrated for. They're not calibrated to read the electromagnetics of a person, for example. That's why you can hold it against yourself and it won't go off, right? So it's a different range of frequencies. So we have to take that into account. So we don't know what spirits are made of. We really don't. But what's interesting is that you know, when you've got something, for example, like a lightning strike, you've got a wavelength band of about 777 nanometers. So the reason why this is important is that it's basically near the infrared region of the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, so this is the other end of the scale to the very really like low frequency stuff and low frequency energy that paranormal investigators attempt to basically detect with EMF meters. So that doesn't match up or line up at all. And now that being said, for example, if you believe that, say, spirit energy, one of the theories is that we're dealing with like lingering electrical energy from the brain, then it doesn't make really a lot of sense that lightning energy, for example, could affect it. So brain waves, for example, that have even a lower wavelength than those even picked up by an electromagnetic field meter. So it's about 20,000 kilometers, basically placing them in like a low energy frequency band of the electromagnetic spectrum. So that doesn't add up either. So it's not that a lightning bolt necessarily doesn't generate enough energy to make a difference, but the example that I like to give is the fact that we're generating and talking about a different energy. So it's like putting gasoline or something like that, or diesel in a petrol car, right? So it's like you've got two different fuels, neither of them go together, it doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, when you get a strike of lightning, of course, we know is super powerful. It's basically like 1 billion joules of energy or something like that. It's insane. It's crazy. And it's like enough to power something like it's like a 60-watt light bulb for about 6 months. Like it's crazy amounts of energy in that space. But that electrical energy at the same point lasts milliseconds, and it doesn't have the time to convert itself into any other form of energy or anything like that before something like, you know, if you're one of these people that believes that a spirit, for example, has to take energy from the environment, then that essentially won't add up. So that doesn't make any sense. So although lightning like occurs in these like massive electrical charges, most of the energy is basically lost because it's dispersing, right? It's hitting and then it's dispersing as it goes out. And it also produces a pulse of interference basically across the whole electromagnetic spectrum. So this is why you're hearing lightning strikes, for example, interfere with things like radios and whatnot. And it goes right into things like X-rays and gamma rays. Like it's amazing what lightning will do. So does it have an actual impact on lightning, have an actual impact on paranormal phenomena? It doesn't seem like it to me. From the scientific angle, it doesn't make any sense to me. Sometimes you'll see people use something called electromagnetic pumps during investigations, which produces basically a constant electromagnetic field and whatnot. And it's meant to basically kick out more localized energy than lightning, essentially, right? And but as I say, the relationship between electromagnetics and the paranormal and lightning, it seems to be there's gaps in it, and it's missing for me. But the crazy experience that we had last night, I think it's just phenomenal. It's really cool, and you know, in a lot of ways, I think it is significant to know what it's related to, because when you start to rule out what it's not related to, then you can start to figure out, well, okay, if it's not this, if it's not a storm, if it's not an external environmental situation, then what is it? And in this situation, I think we can rule out the fact that it was a lightning strike, or lightning, because we had kind of a dry lightning storm last night here in Alberta. It was kind of cool. Like, you'd look out your window and there was no sound, but you could see this bank of clouds, and it was just pulsing with lightning and stuff like that in the south. So it was really, really fascinating. But I think the apparition that was seen was not in relation to the electrical storm, and I think it's important. It's important that we're able to deduce this stuff, because if we can't, then we're not doing our job. So the question that I really loved, it came from Kaz the other day, and I wanted to talk about it on Spiritual Healthcare because I think it is such a important question that lots of people have, especially when they've got somebody who is about to pass away, or has had this experience where they've been at a loved one's bedside or something like that, and they've seen, or it seems like their loved one has been talking to somebody or seen something paranormal. Whether it be a loved one that's coming in to the to the bedside or something like that, who has already passed, or just discussing and having these discussions going back and forth. It's really interesting. So I wanted to grab their question because I think it's really relevant. So he says, I had an interesting conversation with my mom today, and I thought I'd pose this topic to you. We'd been talking about a certain situation, and she suddenly asked, do you think he saw his mother? And it made me pause because this person's mother had died before he did. What are your thoughts about seeing loved ones who have passed away before we ourselves pass away? So I love this because there's been a ton of research by some major parapsychologists and researchers, including Ernesto Bozano, who is an Italian researcher who published hundreds and hundreds of articles. One specifically that I think was the most prevalent here, which is apparitions of deceased persons at their deathbeds, and that was in 1906. But everyone from James Hislop, Sir William Barrett, all of these people who in parapsychology have studied this deeply. And it's really interesting. So basically what people describe is the fact that their loved one who is terminally ill or, has been given a life-threatening diagnosis, either sits up in their bed or, they might be close to dying, and they report seeing a loved one who has either passed away or is having interactions with somebody in the room who doesn't seem to be there. Nobody else sees them. So this is something that is relatively frequent within the world of the paranormal. Now, what's interesting about this is that nurses and doctors, they report this all the time, and when I was doing my work on, or am doing my work once it gets back going again with haunted hospitals and paranormal 911, this was something that we heard about very, very frequently. Is that they would, people would see somebody in the room, or they would actually see the patient who is bedridden get up and walk around and whatnot, and they go back and the person hasn't moved, this kind of thing. And they report this frequently, and it's a very high percentage. It's something like it's like 1 in 5 nurses or something like that. Like the statistic is really high that are reporting this type of phenomenon when they're dealing with terminally ill patients. So it's really interesting. So does it happen? In my opinion, yeah, absolutely. I think it does. I think, when we look at the brain waves of people who are passing away versus, say, things like kids, what's interesting is that there's some correlation there between children's brain waves and how they're processing information and people who are terminally ill, which I think is really significant and something to pay attention to, because kids often will have these experiences more readily and more frequently also. So I think that's something that we can take into account also. A lot of these experiences they have a name, and usually when you see a gap between these experiences, say for example, the person gets warned about their health or gets warned about their death or something like that, if there's that type of a thing, they're typically called a peak and Darien experience. So it's basically referencing the astonishment and amazement that the Spanish explorers felt when they climbed a mountain in Panama, and they were expecting to discover the continent of India and ended up at the Pacific Ocean. So that's where that comes from. But in the largest cross-national study of deathbed visions, the cases were found in which the recipient actually didn't expect to be dying. So here's the plot twist. As they had absolutely no terminal prognosis at all. And yet they did die shortly after having the vision. So something in their brain was changing in order for them to start to perceive this new frequency. And I think that's ultimately what it is. Some people they're really fearful of having these experiences because they think, oh my God, if I have this, then that means it's going to curse me and I'm going to die. But I think it's actually the other way around. I think our brain is making an adjustment for the death process, and we become more in tune with those frequencies, and we start seeing stuff whether we know it or not. So that, as they say, the veil starts to lift at that point. But the study, interestingly enough, had no correlation with drug sedation, psychological expectation, none of that applied. So another one of the features of the deathbed visions reported by patients, especially to hospice staff and family members, is the perception of light or beauty. And I think this is really interesting. So when we start to break down and look at how we perceive the paranormal, how we perceive paranormal experiences, how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive, our own deaths, all of those things. We can start to see a very interesting correlation between what people experience with apparitions when it comes to like seeing the light and stuff like this, versus how they're interpreting their own image and their own views on the paranormal. So what's interesting to me, what I find really cool, is the fact that if we take ourselves, for example, and we look around the room, we can see everything in the room, right? Like we can look around and see, the computers, or we could see people, or we see everything. But the one thing that we can't see, and we're not designed to see, is ourselves. We can't. We need a mirror, or we need something, right? We need something to be able to look in. And unfortunately, one of the things that ends up happening is that one of the ways that we end up perceiving ourselves is through the eyes of other people, because that's just what we do. So we end up with a bit of a filter. And we see this with the paranormal as well, where people will experience, say, for example, or a group of people will experience this, an amazing occurrence, and they will say, oh my God, I saw I had the most beautiful emotion, beautiful light. They know they've been touched by something extremely special, something non-physical. But what's interesting is that you'll have a group of people and they will all explain it differently. So you'll have one person say, oh my God, I saw angel wings, or oh my God, I saw these beautiful lights, or oh, I saw, whatever that is for them. Their perception and their filter is different. So the people who, say, for example, lean more towards Christianity might see angel wings. The people who lean towards maybe something like Buddhism will see the bright, beautiful lights, or something like that. So it depends. So everybody's having the same experience, but depending on how they're illustrating their world depends on how they end up receiving that imagery and that information. So we have to take that into account when we're thinking about ourselves as well, right? Because how we view ourselves and how we perceive things outside of us is really, really telling. So what I always like to take a look at with this topic is when the only way that we can really see ourselves is to imagine ourselves, right? Unless we've got a mirror in front of us or something like that, we can imagine ourselves. We have an image of how we kind of walk through the world and whatnot. But as soon as we start to take in these other perceptions and these other filters, we have to start asking ourselves, who is sketching you? Who is sketching you? Who is drawing on that slate of who you are? Who is drawing on that picture? And how much of what we are imagining is actually accurate? When we look at the word imagine, right? What it is image in. That's what it is. Image in. Imagine, right? So image in, that's what this is. It's the image that we hold within ourselves. It's the image that it's that internal dialogue and picture and perspective. A lot of people who have lost extreme amounts of weight talk about this a lot, where, they still talk about seeing themselves as, 200, 300, 400, 500 pounds, even though they've lost the weight maybe years ago. The image that they're carrying, that image of what's going on in their head, is very different. It's very different. They're still seeing themselves, or, somebody who was, abused as a child, for example, might be, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old and still seeing themselves as this little child, and they're imagining themselves in that different way. So when we look at the paranormal and we look at, how we filter images and we filter ourselves, I think taking a look at how we are, receiving things like apparitions and stuff like that. It's an interesting telltale sign, because, they can't see themselves either, really. As far as we know, they can't see themselves either. It's all about our perception, right? It's all about our perception. Sometimes what we'll hear about is loved ones coming back, say, for example, and, you've got a group of family members, and they'll say, they collectively see the apparition. They all see it. but it might appear to them in different ages or a different state of being than they were, you know, to the person standing next to them or something like that. It's really interesting. So it really does. We write on the filters of what we see, what we perceive, and we have to be conscious that it applies to how we are perceptively imagining ourselves as well, because it really does. It makes a big difference. And so that's the one thing that I wanted to challenge you guys to today, is to take a look at that filter for yourself. How are you imagining yourself, and is it accurate? Apply the litmus test. Is it true? Is it true? And is it kind? Because that's one of those things where we tend to, sometimes we have sketched ourselves, or other people have sketched us in a way that is just toxic. It's just toxic. And we have to be able to see ourselves truthfully. And it's hard, but to be able to see without as many of the filters as we possibly can, and to take a look at, again, image in, imagine, image in. What is it for you? So I wanted to add a little bit to that this afternoon with our Faith in the Valley from Ian Van Zandt, because I think there's a great passage in here that I really loved this morning as I was reading. And I wanted to be able to share it with you guys, because I think this has a lot to do with how we are presenting ourselves in the world, how we are seeing ourselves, how Source is seeing us, you know, what its perception is of us, or perceiving through us, the world around it as well. So I wanted to add this to the conversation because I thought this was really good. You cannot come to Source with your hands full. You cannot expect Spirit to lift you up if you come with a clenched fist. Very often we seek the assistance, support, guidance of that energy when we are filled to the brim with our own stuff. We come with perceived notions, fixed ideas and opinions, judgments and criticisms of others, very structured demands of what we need, how we want it, and what we are willing to do or not do to get it. The universe does not work that way. If everyone got what they wanted, exactly the way they wanted it, there would be no room for divine intervention or improvement. What about the demands we make when we are angry, frightened, upset, or desperate? Very often the things we cry out for in the moment are not things we really want or need. And let us not forget those occasions when we ask for help while hiding something behind our backs. Truth. Something we didn't want anyone else to know, something we were ashamed to admit, something hidden in the subconscious mind. We may not have remembered, realized, or understood what it was, but the universe did and responded accordingly. No matter how afraid, ashamed, angry, or upset we might be, we must empty out before we face Source. The best way to get what you need, just in the nick of time, is to come to Source with nothing in hand. And I love the bit, I love this sentence. We may not have remembered, realized, or understood what it was, but the universe did and responded accordingly. I love that so much, because I think that's one thing that we forget. We forget about that it is a response to us. It's responding. This, you know, we live in this responsive universe and world where, you know, whether we're dealing with an apparition, whether we're dealing with, you know, a perceived event, whether we're dealing with our image in of ourselves, right? The universe is responding accordingly. It's not responding necessarily to what it is that you want. It's responding to what you are. What are we presenting that it is responding to, and giving us back that equivalent of the energy that we bring out. And when we come with that sort of bare bones and can at least put those filters down, I think we get a far clearer picture of what can be possible and presented to us in this brand new way. It's really cool. So the more I know that I am experiencing this, you know, the quarantine, of course, the pandemic that's been going on, all of these different things. I don't know about you guys, but I have found that this has been a time of clarity. It's been a time of clarity, challenging in so many different ways, but and including challenging not only because, you know, we're missing people and we're missing, you know, seeing family and stuff like that, but it's challenging in the sense that we have had to take a very hard look at our filters, especially when we've got, you know, of course, the riots and things like that, the resistance that is going on right now in the U.S., in America. You know, we've had to take a hard look at our filters, but not only our filters towards others. That's the thing. That's the thing. It's about the filters that we've got towards ourselves. Image in. What's the image? What are we drawing on that slate? It's really important. We got to pay attention. We got to pay attention, because so much of the time, here's the other part of the problem. So much of the time, our external filters and how we're seeing the world is because we've brought this stuff in to the pandemic. It's not necessarily all the time that we've brought it, you know, that it's come from, you know, it's come from the virus, or come, you know, because people have decided to start taking a stand. We've brought this stuff in with us, you know, and we get a circumstance like a quarantine or COVID or something happens, and, you know, we start to see those filters, you know, really, really come up. So it's time to check in with that. So, that being said, everybody, please keep sending in your questions, because all of them are amazing, and they are so good to be able to dig into. I've still got like a stack of them, and it's amazing. And please don't stop sending them, because I just love them. So we've got to go into our day with our affirmations, because I have a bird right now sitting on the deck that is chirping his brains out, like chirping his. I kid you not, he has not been quiet this entire time. I'm sure you guys can hear him. My baby birds, all the baby birds that had hatched on the deck have left. They just left. And so I don't know what they're yapping about out there. I have no idea. All right. So everybody take a breath. I am a channel of peace and well-being, and my need for peace is abundantly met. I unconditionally accept, love, and appreciate myself for who I am. I recognize and am grateful for the abundance that is constantly flowing into my life, which I can choose to allow or not. I feel with every breath a sense of peace and love. I help others by maintaining and tending to my connection with Source as much as possible. This well-being is accessible to me even in a sea of uncertainty. And at this moment, all is well. I am able to liberate myself from my past and live with peace and serenity. I can see and appreciate all the beauty and abundance of life around me. I am able to embrace love while letting go of fear. And I find my peace with the soothing silence of my inner being. And everybody take a breath. Thank you guys for another amazing spiritual healthcare day. We will do this again tomorrow, of course. We'll be on day 77 tomorrow. It'll be day 77. It's crazy. Please, if you could, share the playlist on YouTube, youtube.com/EntitySeeker. It really helps to push this out there and be able to bring more people in and to join this. And this could not be possible without all of you guys. It could not. So thank you so much. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Of course, for those of you guys who are new, all of the classes can be found on EntitySeeker.ca, which is the official site, or youtube.com/EntitySeeker. You can find all of everything. Everything's there, including there's some show videos too. I'm really hoping soon that I will be able to do some more live classes and stuff like that, because it's so much fun. It's so different, to be able to, have that group of people in the audience and hang out, and the energy of the live shows are so much fun. So I'm hoping they'll be able to stream some of those soon. And I will see you guys tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Bye, everybody.